They're closing in. Mary's safe in the cave. If anyone reads this, don't be sad. I had a good week. Commander Vreshkar's 4 glowing eyes went wide. A sound escaped his throat, not a sob, something rawer. The diary trembled in his grip. 3 days earlier, he had been inspecting the recovery grid near the crater where the human battalion made its final stand. He had not slept well since returning to this place. Salvage teams pulled twisted metal and bone from the mud. One soldier held up a small green object, a canvas journal. A salvage trooper handed Vreshkar the mud-caked notebook. "Commander, you should see this," the soldier said.
"Just debris. Burn it."
But the faded green cover stopped him. He flipped it open. Day 1, squad's gone, found a stream. Now in his tent, that single line echoed. He had stood on the ridge when the human was cornered, and he had given the order.
Commander, the recovery reports are waiting. You've been in here for hours.
Vreshkar didn't answer. He closed the diary, pressing it against his chest armor, and for the first time in years, he felt the weight of a war he had tried to forget.
"Not now. Leave the reports outside."
He pulled the lantern closer and opened the diary again. The first page was dated 3 years ago. Day 1, squad's gone, found a stream. A young human soldier stood on a ridge. 3 rifle stock crosses behind him. He had no shovel, only his hands.
He buried them and then found water, like an animal, no, like a survivor.
He turned the page. Day 4, killed 3 of them today, made coffee. The handwriting was steady. The image rose. The same soldier, crouched by a tiny fire, pouring water into a dented cup. His face showed no triumph, just exhaustion.
"He killed 3 of my own men. Then he made coffee."
On the inside cover, a name and an age in boyish scrawl. Sergeant Andrew, 24. A worn photograph was tucked there of a smiling woman and child.
24. He was just a boy.
He lay on his cot, eyes open, the lantern flickering. Sleep would not come. The scent of coffee seemed to fill the tent, though there was none. Morning light seeped through the tent flap. Vreshkar had not moved. The diary lay open on the crate. The lantern burnt out. Day 5, caught 3 fish in the stream. Spotted a patrol, had to hide until dark. Day 6, raining. Stayed in the rocks. The human had survived in the ravine for a week, stealing water, sleeping under ledges. No rage in the words, just patience. Then Vreshkar turned the page. Day 7, found a kitten, named her Mary. His throat tightened. The human soldier cradled a gray scrap of fur in his filthy hands. His face, hardened by days of solitude, softened completely. He fed her scraps of dried fish, and she slept in his helmet. He wrote about her in the dark, using a broken stabilizer as a pen.
A kitten. Amid all that death, he saved a kitten. He was alone, hunted, and he chose tenderness.
Commander, the morning briefing started 20 minutes ago. The recovery coordinators are waiting. What are you doing?
Cancel it. Cancel everything for today. I am not leaving this tent.
The lieutenant stared, then retreated. Vreshkar heard the murmurs outside. His command was starting to fray, but he did not care. Vreshkar turned the page. Day 8, set tripwires. Mary watches. She's all I need. Day 9, hear engines. They're scanning. Mary stayed quiet. Day 10, found a deep cave. Left her water and the last fish. He read the last entry again. They're closing in. Mary's safe. The words burned. The cave was real. The human described a cliff north of the stream. Vreshkar pulled the tactical map and spread it over the crate. His claw traced the grid. A limestone outcrop marked unstable. That had to be it.
Commander, the day is lost. The teams have no orders.
We're taking a recon team. I found a cave where a soldier hid his cat.
A cat? Sir, that's insanity. High Command will call this dereliction. You'll face a tribunal.
Let them. Assemble 5 soldiers. We leave within the hour. No questions.
Zarn saluted stiffly. Outside, the relayed order cut through the murmurs, and the camp fell silent. An hour after the order, 6 armored figures pushed into the marshland north of the crater. Fog clung to the reeds. The ground sucked at their boots. A young soldier stepped into a hidden sinkhole. Vanishing to his chest, Zarn dove, hauling him free by the collar strap.
Commander, this terrain is unfit. We're chasing a ghost.
Maybe he's right. Maybe I am dragging them into madness for a dead man's diary.
Then a soldier called out. Amid the cattails lay a broken rifle, its stock shattered, human blood long dried on the grip. A few yards further, a dented canteen, the fabric strap frayed, the same one from the diary entries. Then, at the muddy edge of a stream, small depressions. 4 toes, no claws, cat paw prints, years old but unmistakable.
I commanded the Legion at Belfour. I gave the order that cornered this human.
Then, why are we here?
Because I need to know if something good survived. Now, move. We're close.
They climbed out of the marsh onto stone. Ahead, a limestone cliff covered in vines. Vreshkar tore aside the vines. A dark crevice gaped barely wide enough for his shoulders.
Wait here. Keep watch. I go alone.
He clicked on his flashlight and ducked inside. The sound of dripping water echoed faintly. The beam picked out rotted ration packs and a cold fire ring. Someone had lived here and waited. A small nook held torn cloth and a human's glove, but it was empty.
She's gone. 3 years. What was I thinking? The silence was a verdict.
He sat on a rock, the flashlight dangling. The weight of the empty cave crushed him. Then, from the deepest dark, a sound. Thin, trembling. A meow. He froze. The meow came again, more insistent, and his heart slammed against his ribs. Vreshkar swung the flashlight toward the sound. Deep in a fissure, 2 green eyes reflected back. A full-grown gray tabby sat beside a dented bowl. Dried remnants of a Krelthian ration pack lined the bottom. Around her neck hung a thin chain, a soldier's ID tag. A Krelthian serial number was stamped on the metal.
You are real. You survived. But who?
He knelt, and the cat padded forward, rubbing against his armored knee. He lifted her, and she purred against his chest. His flashlight swept the cave. Behind a fallen slab, an alcove hid a cache, a powered-off lantern, water packets, empty ration packs, a slim notebook. Its cover stamped with Krelthian field insignia lay on top. He opened it with a trembling hand. Korveth 3.2.47, Delen 5.7.47, Zarn 11.9.48. 3 pages of names, each entry a date and a note. Fed, watered, played. At the top, in neat Krelthian script, those who kept Belfour's cat alive.
My own soldiers.
Vreshkar emerged from the cave into pale sunlight, the gray tabby curled in one arm and a slim Krelthian notebook in the other. He said nothing as they marched back. At the camp, he called a full assembly. Armored figures formed a tense crescent under the gray sky, eyes darting to the cat.
I found this diary in the mud. It belonged to the human sergeant we cornered at the ridge. He wrote about a kitten. I found this roster. Your names are in it. Who fed her? Step forward. They saw him through their scopes. They saw him cradle this cat and could not forget.
3 soldiers stepped forward, heads bowed. The old sergeant touched the ID tag on the cat's collar and spoke of finding her crying, unable to leave. Vreshkar pulled the sergeant into an unarmored embrace. The cat nestled between them. The cat nestled between them. The camp went utterly silent.
We are Krelthians. We do not abandon the weak. Today you taught me that.
He looked down. Mary purred against his chest plate, and for the first time since Belfour, something felt clean. The assembly dispersed, but the looks soldiers exchanged were not of shame. They were of shared, impossible grace. He carried Mary to his tent and made a nest from a folded blanket. She kneaded the fabric, purring as he settled beside her on the cot.
Found a kitten, named her Mary.
The cat curled into a ball on the open diary, her back rising and falling. For a long moment, he simply watched. A communications officer ducked into the tent, holding a priority encrypted tablet. Zarn followed, face tight. Commander Vreshkar, cease all non-essential activity. Return to High Command for immediate debriefing. Acknowledge receipt.
They're watching you. This is an order, not a request. Comply, or it's your rank.
I know what it is. If I obey, she goes to a shelter, or worse. If I refuse, I lose my command, my pension, my name. Send back that I am still cataloging critical war materials. That should buy a day.
Zarn opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. The commander's eyes had fallen again on the diary, and they were filled with a strange, quiet resolve. He opened a command channel and typed his retirement request. Reason, personal, effective, immediately. He sent it before doubt could settle.
I found something that changed what I believe a warrior can be. I am bringing it home.
He packed the diary, the kitten's old collar, and a pressed flower from between the pages. He added his officer's pin.
Zarn, you have command. I've filed my retirement. Keep the soldiers secret as long as you can.
You are throwing away 30 years of service for a cat.
Number for what he left behind.
He walked, alone, to the crater where the human had made his last stand. Mary nestled in a carrier against his chest. He bent and pressed his officer's pin into the dark soil. A marker for a boy he never met. At the shuttle ramp, the crew stared. He boarded without a word, the carrier held close. As the stars grew sharp through the viewport, he touched the diary and whispered Andrew's name to the silent cat in the quiet cabin. Vreshkar finally read every page. Not just the days, but the margins, the worn corners, the coffee stain. Day 11. Late. They know I am here. Cave shaking. Mary is hidden. I'll draw them east. The human had written with a steady hand as stone dust sifted from the ceiling. He had not panicked.
He walked out to die so they wouldn't search the cave. He chose to be found.
The Krelthian Legion had been sweeping the valley, and Andrew had led them east, away from the hidden cat. He left the kitten in the dark, kissed the top of her head, and stepped into the open, where the light found him.
My soldiers would have fired blind. He gave them a target so she could live.
The diary slipped from his claws. Mary crawled onto his chest and pressed her forehead to his jaw.
He saved you, and he saved my soldiers, and I never knew.
The ship hummed onward, carrying the warrior, the cat, and the thin canvas book that held a dead human's heart. The shuttle touched down before dawn. Vreshkar stepped onto the concourse, Mary in her carrier, the diary in his grip. His wife and 2 children waited at the door, their eyes falling to the carrier. He had told them nothing.
Day 1. Squads gone. Found a stream.
They listened in silence, their small horns tilted forward, eyes unblinking. He turned to day 7. Found a kitten, named her Mary. His voice cracked.
Is Mary the kitten, Father?
This is Mary. He saved her.
That night, the routine began. War stories died in his throat, replaced by a human's quiet days. The diary became sacred, placed on a shelf beside a pressed flower and a folded photograph. And every evening, small voices asked to hear about the soldier who found a kitten in the dark. Gray crept into his horns. Grandchildren climbed onto his lap. And every evening the diary opened. Neighbors came, drawn by the quiet story of a soldier who chose mercy. A letter arrived, oil-stained, from a soldier who had served under him. I saw a human give water to a wounded Krelthian child. I have never spoken of it until now. Others wrote too. We fed the cat because we could not forget the look in the human's eyes.
They all knew. kindness was not a rumor, it was a truth they buried.
He sat late. The diary open. The letters spread like a war map. He wrote to each soldier, asking permission to share the story. Within weeks, a chorus returned. Not one voice refused, so he began to plan. Not a monument of victory, but a place where the humans' words could live. Vreshkar stood before the Council of Veterans, the diary raised in his claw.
A human soldier, hunted and alone, wrote this. It ends with "Don't be sad. I am here because we must be better."
Silence held. Then a senior counselor rose. "A single human does not undo a war, Commander."
Then read this.
He read the names aloud. Soldiers who had fed the cat for 3 years. A rustle swept the chamber. The senior counselor lowered the roster. "What do you want from us?"
Land near the crater. Permission to build a memorial, funded not by the state, but by soldiers who believe.
Approval came with a single condition. No state credits. It would be built by the soldiers, or not at all.
Zarn will design it. He knew the cat. He'll know what it needs.
Days later, stone arrived. A new name sat on a donation ledger. Belfour Memorial. 1 credit PVT. Corveth. More followed. The stone took shape. A craftsman's chisel revealed a human face, gentle. A kitten curled in his stone hands, month by month. The spire rose where the crater had been, funded by soldiers' stipends and widows' coppers. The diary's journey ended in a glass case at the memorial's heart, open to the page that said, "Don't be sad."
There, now they'll see.
The night before the opening, he returned alone. Mary, old and gray-muzzled, rode in the crook of his arm. He sat on the cold stone plinth and opened the diary one last time before its words belonged to the world.
They're closing in. Mary's safe in the cave. If anyone reads this, don't be sad. I had a good week. He wasn't writing to a human. He was writing to whoever would listen. To us.
He closed the glass lid. Mary mewed once, and the stars held their breath. Tomorrow, the galaxy would read. Tonight, it was still his. Dawn broke over the largest monument on Krelthos, and the crowd stretched to the horizon. Reshkar climbed the steps slowly, the old diary in his hand, Mary in a small basket at his feet.
I was the officer who ordered the attack that killed this human. I am here to tell you who he was. They're closing in. Mary's safe in the cave. If anyone reads this, don't be sad. I had a good week.
He told of the kitten, of the stream, of a boy who made coffee on a war zone.
My own soldiers fed this cat for 3 years because they saw mercy in the human's eyes. They could not forget. Let Belfour be remembered not as a massacre, but as the place we learned that an enemy's heart can be gentle.
Silence, long and deep. Then a single white flower landed at the base of the glass case. More flowers followed, an avalanche of petals covering the glass. The diary still open beneath. A young Krelthian girl stretched on her toes and pressed a single yellow blossom against the page that said, "Don't be sad." As the crowd thinned, a small group of humans waited near the memorial steps. Reshkar had invited them, but he had not expected them to come. A woman with tired, kind eyes stepped forward. She pressed a tiny dried flower into his palm, her hand trembling. She whispered, her voice broken. She was Andrew's sister. She had believed he was alone, lost in the silence.
He was not alone. He saved a small life, and it changed us all.
She smiled, a fragile, trembling thing, and thanked him for bringing her brother home. He walked to the glass case and tucked her flower beside the others, a piece of home for a soldier who would never return. That night, in his study, the diary's glow replaced by public light, he held Andrew's photograph. For the first time since the crater, the weight in his chest eased. He had returned the boy to his family.
You did more than survive, Andrew. You taught a warrior to feel.
He leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the quiet hold him. The war, at last, was over. Seasons turned. The old cat. Mary spent her final days on the memorial steps, the sun warming her gray fur. When her time came, they carved a small mark on the memorial stone. Mary, Belfour's cat. The girl who placed the yellow blossom returned year after year, her horns lengthening, her hands no longer a child's. She knelt and left a fresh flower each anniversary, her own children now watching from behind. The diary remained open under glass, always surrounded by a fresh carpet of petals. The inscription read, "From the soldiers of Krelthos, for the one who taught us peace." A child's hand pressed a flower over the line, "Don't be sad," and the galaxy kept reading. Species from 100 worlds came to stand before the statue of a human holding a small cat. Reshkar's name was carved quietly onto the donor wall, just another soldier who believed. And on the page, beside the pressed flower, the words endured, "I had a good week." Years later, the same council that once doubted gathered not to interrogate, but to honor. They minted a medal with a human face on one side. The medal was placed inside the glass case, beside the diary, beneath a new inscription, "The enemy who taught us peace." They printed the diary in 100 languages and sent it to every school in the Empire. In classrooms, young Krelthians read Day 7 aloud, and their teachers had to pause when they reached "Named her Mary." Krelthian soldiers carried pocket copies into the field, not as propaganda, but as a reminder of who they might be facing. The galaxy established the Andrew Accords, a treaty ensuring the dignity of prisoners, inspired by 11 handwritten pages. A joint human Krelthian school was built on the old battlefield, where the crater once scarred the ground. In its hall, the original diary lay in its case, and every morning a child from each species placed a flower together. Reshkar, now so old he could barely hold a pen, was asked to write the foreword for the official edition. He wrote only, "He had a good week. Because of him, so did we." Then he set the pen down, and the galaxy felt the quiet. The years were kind, but they were many. Reshkar grew too frail to rise, the diary always within reach on the nightstand. His family gathered. The youngest grandchild climbed onto the bed and opened the diary to the last page.
If anyone reads this, don't be sad. I had a good week.
The old warrior's breathing slowed, then stopped. The diary lay open on his chest, his hand resting over Andrew's photograph. They buried him beside the memorial, under a simple stone. He found mercy in a crater. A century passed. The diary remained behind glass, visited by millions from 100 worlds. A small child, half human, half Krelthian, stood on tiptoe and pressed a flower to the glass.
Found a kitten. Named her Mary.
The galaxy had learned the words by heart. "Don't be sad. I had a good week." And in the quiet of the hall, the diary remained open. 11 days of a human's life, still telling the universe not to be sad. Every dawn, fresh flowers appeared on the glass. No one saw who placed them. The galaxy breathed differently. A child's hand, species unknown, pressed a single blossom against the glass, right over the words, "Don't be sad." The pressed flower inside the diary had faded, but the ink held. It always held, and in the memory of a war no one wanted to forget. A young human soldier still cradled a kitten in the dark. They're closing in. Mary's safe in the cave. If anyone reads this, don't be sad. I had a good week. A gray tabby slept on the memorial steps each afternoon, as if waiting for someone who never came. In the diary's cover, the photograph still smiled, a human woman and child who never stopped waiting. But the soldiers who came after learned what Reshkar learned. The enemy is not a species, it is forgetting, and every generation, a small hand reaches up and places a flower on the page that says, "Don't be sad," and the universe, at last, learned to obey. The memorial stood silent at dawn, its shadow stretching toward the crater that was no longer a wound. A small hand, wrinkled now, rested on the glass. She had been the girl with the yellow blossom. They're closing in. Mary's safe in the cave. If anyone reads this, don't be sad. I had a good week in every shadow of every war. The memory of a young man and his kitten lingered. Reshkar's reflection lived in the glass now, beside the diary, a permanent part of the story. And the gray tabby that slept on the steps was not Mary, but her great-great-granddaughter, and she knew the way. The stonecarver's mark, Mary, Belfour's cat, was worn smooth by centuries of touch. The diary never closed. The page never turned, the words never aged, and when the last star burned out in the final museum of the universe, under the last glass, those words would still be there. Don't be sad. I had a good week.